1975 marked the year of catastrophic floods in Las Vegas, devastating much of the city's infrastructure at the time. It was then that flood tunnels were constructed, providing a means to control future torrential rains. However, Las Vegas has long enforced strict policies against homelessness. Police are instructed to clear the main streets of unhoused individuals to ensure tourists are shielded from the harsh realities of the city. For this reason, among others, many sought refuge in these tunnels, creating a shelter for people from all walks of life. These tunnels are now considered among the most dangerous places in the United States, not only because of criminal activity, but also due to the threat of flooding and the maze-like network of underground passages where many have vanished. While today, these tunnels are increasingly controlled by organized crime with strict rules and permissions to enter, this wasn't always the case. In the beginning, they seemed like a free-for-all, open to anyone curious enough to explore, though they risked encounters with the occasional drifter. By the 1990s, parts of the tunnel structures began collapsing, suspected by some not to be accidental, revealing old passageways from the city's earliest underground networks. On Thursday, July 3, 1975, just ahead of the 4th of July holiday weekend, a summer monsoon triggered a flash flood across the Las Vegas Valley. While some gamblers remained oblivious inside the casinos on the Las Vegas Strip, floodwaters submerged Interstate 15 exits and shut down major intersections. The raging water rushed down the Flamingo Wash, pouring into the Caesars Palace parking lot on the Strip and inundating hundreds of cars. Cranes had to be brought in to remove vehicles, some of which were later found miles away from Caesars. The force of the floodwaters toppled telephone poles, and sewage treatment plants became overwhelmed, forcing foul water up through the storm drains. Well, owners were warned about potential contamination. The damages were estimated to exceed $4 million. 2 North Las Vegas City employees, directing traffic during the storm, tragically lost their lives when a wall of water struck them at Lucy and Craig Roads, sweeping them away from their vehicle. In the July 4, 1975, edition of the Review-Journal, a spokesperson for the Las Vegas Public Works Department described it as the worst flood in the area since 1955, which had caused an estimated $3 million in damages. 1991 marked a chilling chapter in Las Vegas history when, over several nights in April, authorities conducted the first major raid on the city's flood tunnels. The operation aimed to resolve, or at least gather clues about, one of the most disturbing mysteries in recent years. Since the construction of the tunnels, a growing number of tourists and casual hotel guests from the Strip had been reported missing, leading to grim discoveries. Unidentifiable bodies in conditions that deeply alarmed federal security agents were found near tunnel entrances. These findings began to piece together a series of unsettling events, all seemingly converging in the tunnels. Food had never been a source of concern in Las Vegas' vast and luxurious hotels. In fact, the city's renowned dining options were a major draw, enticing visitors with the promise of exquisite culinary experiences from around the globe, ensuring their return year after year. However, by the late 1980s, some of the most prestigious hotels and casinos began receiving an unsettling wave of complaints. Patrons reported everything from foul-smelling dishes to the horrifying presence of worms and strange larvae in stews, pastas, and meats. This unprecedented issue sent shockwaves through the industry. Hotel management initially suspected deliberate sabotage, theorizing that supply shipments might have been tampered with en route to Las Vegas, or that food providers were neglecting proper hygiene protocols. Yet, investigations into these supply chains revealed no irregularities. Attention then turned to the hotel kitchen staff. A rigorous inquiry ensued, requiring not only internal oversight but also police involvement. The mystery deepened when it was discovered that nearly 20 employees from 6 different hotels failed to return to work or attend interviews with investigators. Attempts to trace their whereabouts proved fruitless, as did efforts to locate their families, who had been financially untraceable for over 5 years. In the few instances where family members were found, they were living in extreme poverty, with some having records of arrests for public disturbances. Their current location? The tunnels beneath the Las Vegas Strip. The contaminated food crisis not only caused severe distress for its victims, but also led to deaths from acute parasitic infections. While the resulting lawsuits didn't financially cripple the hotels and casinos, they created a damaging paper trail that raised serious concerns about the long-term reputation of these establishments. Another peculiar phenomenon from the same era involved reports of alleged toxic gases seeping into the ground floor bathrooms of several hotels, including the iconic Caesars Palace. According to police and paramedics who attended to the victims, a pattern emerged. The incidents occurred between 4:00 and 6:00 a.m. Victims reported a nauseating odor emanating from the ventilation grates, followed by sudden unconsciousness within seconds. It is believed that the toxic gas leaks were linked to 8 separate incidents across 4 different hotels. Security footage showed individuals entering the bathrooms but never exiting. The 6 men and 2 women involved had no familial ties and had not interacted with each other during their stays. When investigators examined the bathroom ventilation pipes, they discovered traces of a sticky, yellowish substance. Laboratory analysis revealed an extraordinarily high concentration of quinones, compounds naturally produced by insects, though the levels indicated possible human intervention. Despite an exhaustive review of hotel access records and surveillance footage from hallways and rooms equipped with cameras, no suspicious individuals were identified. The mystery surrounding these incidents remains unsolved, fueling speculation about an orchestrated yet undetectable scheme. In the same context, reports emerged of swarms of insects in underground parking lots, a highly unusual occurrence in such a densely urbanized, bustling, and noisy area. Some individuals even photographed hundreds of moths, significantly larger than those naturally found in the United States. Many resembled species native to the swampy regions of Southeast Asia. Fumigation teams removed the remains of the insects, but were unable to identify any source from which they might have originated. There were no records of migratory or illegal animal imports, and the presence of such exotic creatures would likely have caused a noticeable issue elsewhere in the city. Yet, these occurrences remained isolated, their sudden appearances adding to the overall mystery. Over several nights in April, the Clark County Police conducted a series of operations at the main entrances to the Las Vegas tunnels. After arresting several individuals, many of whom were incapacitated due to drug use, authorities began systematically clearing the tunnels. Assisted by sanitation services, they removed over 2 tons of waste, bringing a semblance of order to these labyrinthine spaces. The massive police operation, supported by military assistance, successfully apprehended the leaders of 3 of the most dangerous gangs operating within the Las Vegas tunnels. However, what initially seemed like another raid in the ongoing battle against crime and drug trafficking unexpectedly turned into a case of extraordinary and disturbing rarity. After dismantling nearly all the criminal factions, the authorities began tearing down the structures built by these groups. Among their discoveries were dangerously large cracks that could have compromised streets and buildings on the surface. But the most shocking find came when they uncovered old passageways constructed in the early 20th century as shelters during the city's formative years. Expecting to find drugs, cash, or perhaps stolen valuables, the officers were met with a nightmarish sight they had not prepared for. Inside the tunnels lay an appalling number of corpses and body parts, many showing signs of having been gnawed on by small mouths. In other sections of the tunnels, these same bodies were found wrapped in fibers and partially fused with moth-like creatures. It was as though they had stumbled upon a grotesque laboratory experimenting on human subjects. And yet there was no sign of advanced technology or deliberate human engineering. Instead, the scene consisted only of long, foul-smelling tunnels flooded with murky yellowish water, where the bodies were cocooned in organic materials, seemingly integrated into their horrifying surroundings. As they ventured deeper into the tunnels, the walls became increasingly rocky, overrun with organic forms that seemed to consume the surfaces. Additionally, pools of viscous, greasy, aqueous material surrounded the area, hinting at the presence of some yet-to-be-studied creatures possibly emerging from within. Eventually, they stumbled upon what appeared to be a portal, seemingly human-made but bearing unmistakable signs of significant age. Judging by the craftsmanship and aesthetics, the structure could have easily been over 200 or 300 years old. Inside, an overwhelming number of sculptures depicting inexplicable creatures were found, frozen in bizarre poses and expressions. The discovery's magnitude only complicated the investigation into the Las Vegas tunnels. Rather than providing clarity, it presented the authorities with a challenge, keeping this information from the public. Before sealing off the area entirely, the FBI conducted extensive interviews with every detainee apprehended in the tunnels, attempting to extract the full story of what had transpired there. Some of the testimonies recorded were as follows.
We had to choose between dying out there in the open or submitting to the forces that rule the world beneath. And no, I'm not talking about drugs or criminal gangs. There's a truth down there, one you might never understand, but we all belong to that truth, the true form of our souls. One day, we'll all become one, the impure only served by paving the way for its arrival. Yes, I confess that I offered my body to the grace of Emerald, so the one could possess me and return to the surface for the unfaithful.
Initially, it was assumed that the detainees might be suffering from severe psychiatric conditions. However, renowned specialists summoned to examine this group, comprising over 100 men and women rescued from the tunnels, identified peculiar consistencies in their testimonies. For instance, nearly all of them referred to the same entity. Their accounts were detailed and extensive, and no individual contradicted another, even when recounting events that bore all the hallmarks of delusions. The cohesion and structured nature of these stories, devoid of the fragmentation typical of psychotic episodes, were particularly striking to the experts. Following the evaluation and detention of the displaced individuals, Clark County issued a structural and sanitary alert to security services. In record time, major reconstruction efforts were undertaken, sealing cracks and reinforcing weak points in the walls and floors of the tunnels. Today, while the tunnels have once again become a haven for criminal activity and homelessness, no incidents akin to those of 1991 have been reported. It seems that the ancient passages of the city were sealed thoroughly enough to prevent anyone from re-encountering the horrors that once lurked within passages that reportedly extended far beyond the known boundaries of the tunnels themselves.